I'm Deanna. Standing outside the courthouse, the air feels different, a new beginning after the long-fought battles. The weight of what I've been through has finally started to lift, but the memories are still vivid. It all started on what should have been a special day, my birthday. The winter in Seattle pressed its cold against the windows, and my husband, Ethan, stood in the middle of our living room, holding a large shopping bag with a ribbon. His voice lacked the warmth I remembered from the early days of our marriage. "Happy birthday," he said evenly. I forced a smile, a glimmer of hope slipping in despite my efforts not to expect much. We had once talked about a fur coat while passing a boutique window. I had paused for a moment, admiring its elegance. Ethan always noticed such things, but rarely acted on them. Now, he urged me to open the bag. It felt heavier than I expected. As I pulled the ribbon loose, a dark, thick fur emerged. It was not the smooth, glossy coat I'd seen in the window. There was a faint smell of mothballs, and the lining was yellowed with age. The cuffs were worn. I tried to find a non-accusatory word. "It's vintage," I said. Ethan gave a humorless laugh and poured himself a glass of water. "Money isn't happiness. Practicality is real fur," he said, as if reciting a rehearsed conclusion. I ran my hand over the stiff fur. "It's used. Someone else wore this," I whispered. Ethan snapped back, "What difference does it make? I can't spend huge sums on whims." I remembered him talking about successful business deals and new investments. "You promised things were going well," I said softly. He retorted, "They are, but that doesn't mean wasting money." Just then, our son, Leo, burst into the room in his superhero pajamas. "Mom, happy birthday. Dad gave you a coat. Can I see?" he asked, grinning. I knelt and showed him the coat. Leo touched the fur, delighted. "Wow, you'll look like a superhero queen." Ethan smiled, satisfied. But Leo then looked at me seriously. "You're beautiful in any coat, Mom. Don't be sad." I hugged him tightly, trying to erase the smell of the coat. Ethan insisted I wear the coat for dinner. I didn't want to, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. After he left the room, I stayed kneeling with Leo's arms around my neck. I could feel that something had shifted, an irreversible crack in our relationship. Later, as I stood in the living room with the coat draped over the couch, Leo wandered back in with his toy car. He asked to look at the coat again. I hesitated but nodded. Curious as only a child can be, he pressed his fingers into the lining. "Mom, there's a hole," he whispered excitedly. When I knelt beside him, I saw a small tear along the inner seam. Leo peered inside and found a secret pocket. Before I could stop him, his hand emerged with a key and a folded piece of paper. The paper read Train Station Locker 312. I closed my fist around the key, my heart racing. I told Leo it was a surprise and he couldn't tell anyone, especially Dad. When Ethan stepped out of the bathroom, he asked what we were whispering about. I quickly said Leo just liked the coat. He explained the coat came from a business partner's wife who couldn't fit it anymore, but there was something final in his tone that made me uneasy. The next afternoon, I told Ethan I was running errands. I made my way to the Seattle train station, wearing the heavy, unfamiliar coat. The station was busier than I expected. I found locker 312 and with trembling hands, inserted the key. It turned with a soft click, and inside was a small cardboard box sealed with yellow tape. I quickly pulled it out and went to the women's restroom. Inside the stall, I opened the box. On top were a bundle of letters. The paper was thin and brittle, and the handwriting was slanted and urgent. The letters were from the late 1990s, written by a man who sounded frightened. He wrote about interrogations, being blamed for things he hadn't done, and hiding documents for protection. Beneath the letters were photographs. In one, I saw a young couple, and in another, at what looked like a corporate event, I recognized Ethan. At the bottom of the box was a black leather notebook. The pages were filled with precise entries of companies, dates, and large sums of money. I saw Ethan's company several times, along with 6-digit amounts and notes about returns and deadlines. One red ink entry stood out: E must settle by the 20th. Amount outstanding. The 20th had been yesterday, my birthday. Suddenly, Ethan's impatience and tension made sense. I remembered a woman who had approached us at a cafe a month ago. She was elegant and her gaze was sharp. Ethan had gone pale when she greeted him. He introduced her as a former colleague, but I now suspected there was more to it. I repacked the box and slipped the notebook into my bag. I knew I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. That evening, I went to Mr. Thompson's apartment, who lived one floor down. He was in his late 60s, a retired detective with a sharp mind. When he saw my face, he looked concerned. I showed him the notebook and some of the letters. He adjusted his glasses and began to read. After a while, he said, I thought this was buried. Late 90s industrial patents, a major manufacturing fraud. One engineer took the fall, but he was a scapegoat. The investigation was stalled because of pressure from higher up. I told him about my husband's strange behavior. He warned me, if your husband is involved, you're dealing with people who don't want witnesses. Make copies, keep the originals hidden, and say nothing to Ethan. 2 days later, I got a call from Leo's school. They said he had been in a fight on the playground and his drawings showed signs of anxiety. When I arrived at the school, I found Leo sitting on a bench outside the counseling office. He looked up at me, relieved. I didn't mean to. He pushed me first, he said. The school psychologist, Dr. Ryan, introduced himself. He was in his early 30s, with a calm presence. He showed me Leo's drawings. There were small figures hiding and dark shapes looming. Dr. Ryan said, these are signs of perceived threat. Children mirror their environment. I realized Leo was afraid. I told Dr. Ryan I didn't feel safe. He gave me his personal number and said, if you ever feel overwhelmed, call me. One evening, Ethan casually brought up sending Leo to a private institution overseas. He said he had already made inquiries. I was shocked. You didn't discuss this with me, I said. He replied evenly, he's 8 and impressionable. This is the best time to shape him properly. I refused, and he said he could do it on the grounds that I was unstable. He claimed to have professional evaluations showing Leo was under emotional stress because of me. I knew it was a lie, but I was at a loss. That night, when Ethan was asleep, I used Dr. Ryan's guidance to access Ethan's home office. I found photographs of a young, pregnant woman named Lily standing close to Ethan. There were also property documents for an apartment registered in Lily's name. And in the reports folder, I found fabricated psychological evaluations about Leo, designed to build a case against me. I copied all the files onto a flash drive. I knew the fight for my son had begun. One late afternoon, I followed a woman named Miss Harris to a park cafe. I recognized her friend, Sarah, my closest friend. I overheard their conversation. Ms. Harris said Ethan was getting reckless, and Sarah assured her he would calm down. They talked about Ethan moving assets through shell accounts and how they were running out of time. Ms. Harris said if I became a problem, accidents happen. Brake lines fail. Ice does the rest. I was horrified. A twig snapped under my boot, and Sarah turned sharply. I managed to slip away, but I received a message from Ethan asking where I was. I was in a panic, afraid he knew or suspected something. Back at home, I was shaken. I showed the letters to Dr. Ryan, and he was stunned. He recognized his mother's name, Victoria, in the letters. He told me his father was an engineer who was wrongly blamed for the industrial fraud and died in custody. His mother had vanished when he was 8. He also discovered that Miss Harris was an alias for his mother. Dr. Ryan realized his mother had run with evidence and insurance. She had left everything to him in a will, including the patents and instructions on how to reclaim them. We decided to act. We documented everything and involved law enforcement. Just before a disaster, Dr. Ryan warned me not to get in my car. A student had overheard talk of brake failure. He picked me and Leo up and drove us to a cabin in the mountains. By morning, arrests were made. Ethan was taken in at his office, Sarah at her apartment, and Ms. Harris, or Victoria, was detained. The charges were extensive, including fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. The most difficult battle was in family court. Ethan's mother came to me one night. She showed me copies of the false documents she had signed at Ethan's request. She said she didn't know what he was planning, but when he started treating Leo like property, she decided not to lie in court. In court, Ethan's attorney painted a picture of an unstable mother and a devoted father. But when Ethan's mother testified and the recording of Ethan's cruel words about taking Leo as leverage was played, the room went silent. The judge's ruling was decisive. Ethan's parental rights were terminated. After the court case, I felt exhausted but relieved. Dr. Ryan joined me outside the courthouse. He said, "You did everything right." I replied, "I survived, that's all." He looked at Leo, who was happily chatting with Ethan's mother. "That's more than enough," he said. 6 months later, life has changed. I'm expecting a new addition to our family. Leo's drawings are full of happy scenes, and he sleeps deeply at night. Dr. Ryan is a constant presence in our lives, bringing stability and safety. One evening, he gave me a small box with a set of keys. "No secrets," he said gently. "We don't talk about the past often. The truth has set us free, and we're building a new, honest life together. I've learned that safety is built slowly, dignity is reclaimed by standing up for myself, and family is something I choose and protect."